Hey everyone, it's Alex, and I am here with another video preview for the 91st Academy Award. This time, I am taking a look at the shortlists in 9 different categories. Yes, you heard me right, 9. In past years, the Oscars have often frequently released press statements one at a time highlighting shortlisted contenders for certain categories. This year, though, they decided to release all of them at once in this big, massive list. And this list came out nearly a month ago, but I had other stuff to catch up on, both with these videos and with other things in life. So I'm doing it now. So I'm not going to necessarily go in-depth like I would do with an individual video. However, what I will do is I will read off the contenders for each of these shortlists. I will give plot summaries for ones that you may not know about, and I will discuss briefly what I think is going to be nominated, as well as, if I've seen any of the contenders, what I think of them. So I'm going to try to get through these as quickly as possible. So here we go. The categories I'm going to be looking at include Best Documentary Feature, Best Documentary Short Subject, Best Foreign Language Film, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Best Original Score, Best Original Song, Best Animated Short Film, Best Live Action Short Film, and Best Visual Effects. Alright. So here we go. For Best Documentary Feature, a while ago the Academy released a list of 166 films that were submitted in this category, and they always whittle it down to 15 semifinalists. And the 15 semifinalists this year are Charm City, Communion, Crime and Punishment, Dark Money, The Distant Barking of Dogs, Free Solo, Hale County This Morning, This Evening, Minding the Gap, Of Fathers and Sons, On Her Shoulders, RBG, Shirkers, The Silence of Others, Three Identical Strangers, Won't You Be My Neighbor. Some of these you may be familiar with. Won't You Be My Neighbor, of course, is the documentary about Mr. Rogers. Amazing documentary, and it was my number 7 best film of 2018. Free Solo, I haven't seen it, but it's been getting a lot of buzz just because of its subject matter. It's about the guy who climbed the El Capitan Mountain in Yosemite National Park without any safety gear. RBG, which I did see, is of course about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Another great documentary, which was also on my best of 2018 list, as well as Three Identical Strangers. Really good documentary about the 3 identical triplet brothers who were separated at birth, and the reasons why is very interesting. I'm not going to go into spoilers about it, but it's definitely something you should check out. I really liked it, although I felt there were some unanswered questions that could have been explored more, but that's not too big of a nitpick. As for snubs, I'm surprised Whitney didn't make it on here. I thought that was a really good documentary about Whitney Houston, and yeah, it kind of followed the musical biopic documentary, kind of similar to Amy, about Amy Winehouse, in terms of covering all of Whitney Houston's life and her problems with her career, her problems with substance abuse, and how that led to her death. But it's still a very fascinating documentary to watch. As for the other documentaries, here's what they are about, and I looked up the plot summaries on IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes, wherever I could find them. Charm City. During 3 years of unparalleled violence in Baltimore, Charm City delivers an unexpectedly candid, observational portrait of those left on the front lines. With grit, fury, and compassion, a group of police, citizens, and government officials grapple with the consequences of violence and try to reclaim their future. Communion. Living amid domestic instability and teenage volatility, a sister and brother play out their lives on camera. At 14, Ola is already functioning as the woman of the house, cooking and cleaning for her lethargic father and helping her energetic, autistic brother Nicodem prepare for his first Holy Communion. Throughout, she longs for her mother, whose absence is never explained yet always deeply felt. As the date of communion nears, it becomes an opportunity for the family to meet up, and Ola is entirely responsible for planning the perfect family celebration. Crime and Punishment. Amidst a landmark class action lawsuit over illegal policing quotas, Crime and Punishment chronicles the real lives and struggles of a group of Black and Latino whistleblower cops and the young minorities they are pressured to arrest and summons in New York City. A highly intimate and cinematic experience with unprecedented access, Crime and Punishment examines the United States' most powerful police department through the brave efforts of a group of active duty officers and one unforgettable private investigator who risk their careers and safety to bring light to harmful policing practices which have plagued the precincts and streets of New York City for decades. The Distant Barking of Dogs. The Distant Barking of Dogs is set in eastern Ukraine on the front line of war. The film follows the life of 10-year-old Ukrainian boy Oleg throughout a year, witnessing the gradual erosion of his innocence beneath the pressures of war. Oleg lives with his beloved grandmother Alexandra in the small village of Nutov. Having no other place to go, Oleg and Alexandra stay and watch as others leave the village. Life becomes increasingly difficult with each passing day, and the war offers no end in sight. In this now half-deserted village where Oleg and Alexandra are the only true constants in each other's lives, the film shows just how fragile but crucial close relationships are for survival. Through Oleg's perspective, the film examines what it means to grow up in a war zone. Hale County This Morning, This Evening. In Hale County This Morning, This Evening, Ramel Ross offers an inspired and intimate portrait of a place and its people. The film presents Daniel Collins and Quincy Bryant, two young African-American men from rural Hale County, Alabama, over the course of 5 years. Collins attends college in search of an opportunity, while Bryant becomes a father to an energetic son. The audience is invited to experience the mundane and monumental, all of which combine to communicate the region's deep culture and glimpse the complex ways the African American community's collective image is integrated into America's visual imagination. Minding the Gap. Compiling over 12 years of footage shot in his hometown of Rockford, Illinois, in Minding the Gap, Bing Liu searches for correlations between his skateboarder friend's turbulent upbringings and the complexities of modern-day masculinity. As the film unfolds, Bing captures 23-year-old Zach's tumultuous relationship with his girlfriend deteriorate after the birth of their son, and 17-year-old Kiri, I'm not sure if that's the correct pronunciation because I haven't seen this film, struggling with his racial identity as he faces new responsibilities following the death of his father. While navigating a difficult relationship between his camera, his friends, and his own past, Bing ultimately weaves the story of generational forgiveness while exploring the precarious gap between childhood and adulthood. Of Fathers and Sons. After his Sundance Award-winning documentary Return to Homs, Talal Durkee returned to his homeland where he gained the trust of a radical Islamist family, sharing their daily life for over 2 years. His camera focuses mainly on the children, providing an extremely rare insight into what it means to grow up with a father whose only dream is to establish an Islamic caliphate. Osama, 13, and his brother Ayman, 12, are in the center of the story. They both love and admire their father and obey his words, but while Osama seems to follow the path of jihad, Ayman wants to go back to school. The film captures the moment when the children have to let go of their youth and are finally turned into jihadi fighters. On Her Shoulders. 23-year-old Nadia Murad's life is a dizzying array of exhausting undertakings, from giving testimony before the UN to visiting refugee camps to soul-bearing media interviews and one-on-one meetings with top government officials. With deep compassion and a formal precision and elegance that matches Nadia's calm and steely demeanor, filmmaker Alexandria Bambach follows this strong-willed young woman who survived the 2014 genocide of the Yazidis in northern Iraq and escaped the hands of ISIS to become a relentless beacon of hope for her people, even when at times she longs to lay aside this monumental burden and simply have an ordinary life. Shirkers. In 1992, teenagers Sandy Tan and her friends Sophie and Jasmine shot Singapore's first indie road movie called Shirkers with their enigmatic American mentor George Cardona. Sandy wrote the script and played the lead, a killer named S. After shooting wrapped, George vanished with all the footage. 20 years later, the 16mm cans are recovered in New Orleans, sending Sandy, now a novelist in Los Angeles, on a new personal odyssey across 2 continents and many media. 16mm, digital, high 8, Super 8, slides, animation, and handwritten letters. The Silence of Others. The Silence of Others reveals the epic struggle of victims of Spain's 40-year dictatorship under General Franco, who continue to seek justice to this day. Filmed over 6 years, the film follows the survivors as they organize the groundbreaking Argentine lawsuit and fight a state-imposed amnesia of crimes against humanity, and explores a country still divided 4 decades into democracy. So as for what I think will be nominated, Won't You Be My Neighbor, that's certainly a lock to be nominated because just of how critically and commercially successful it's been. Plus it's won many regional awards from film critics groups. Minding the Gap I've not seen, but I've heard amazing things about it. That's probably a lock as well. It's won a lot of regional critics groups. Free Solo, RBG, Three Identical Strangers. All 3 of them could possibly round up the top 5, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do. But there's one documentary that could, I think, be a dark horse contender, and that's Hale County This Morning, This Evening. It hasn't really been seen too much, but I know it's won some, documentary group prizes, which can certainly be helpful in getting an Oscar nomination, because there's always at least one surprise contender in this category that, few people see coming every year. It's probably not going to win, because I think Won't You Be My Neighbor, if it's nominated, will probably hold a strong lock, but as to what I think it could replace, probably maybe it could knock out Three Identical Strangers. Won't You Be My Neighbor and Minding the Gap have so much acclaim, I don't see how either of them aren't nominated. RBG I think will stay in because I think it'll also get nominated in another category, which I'll get to later. And then Free Solo I think will stay in just because of how popular it is, and it's I guess one of those you have to see it to believe it type of movies. So yes, I think the 5 contenders will be Won't You Be My Neighbor, Minding the Gap, RBG, Free Solo, and Hale County This Morning, This Evening. Alright, next up, Best Documentary Short Subject. So, according to this press release, 104 films were originally submitted, but they always have a semi-finalist of 10 contenders. And usually with a short film, they never release the big list beforehand. So, but these are the 10 films that are now the semi-finalists for Best Documentary Short Subject. Black Sheep, Endgame, Lifeboat, Los Comandos, My Dead Dad's Porno Tapes, A Night at the Garden, Period, End of Sentence, 63 Boycott, Women of the Gulag, Zion. Now these are the plot summaries of all of these documentary shorts, and thank you to Charles Bright from GoldDerby.com for writing an article detailing these plot summaries. Much obliged to you, good sir. Black Sheep. Following the high-profile murder of Damilola Taylor, a 10-year-old Nigerian immigrant in London, Cornelius Walker's family decides to move out of London. Upon arriving in their new town, they soon discover that the town is run by racists. This forces Cornelius to resort to drastic measures to survive. Endgame. The film follows several medical professionals who find themselves working on the front lines of life-and-death situations. The innovative research that they are pioneering seeks to change society's thinking about both aspects of life. Lifeboat. A non-profit company out of Germany sends volunteers into the waters of the Mediterranean Sea in the middle of the night in order to help rescue refugees from sinking rafts that had originally launched from the coast of Libya. Los Comandos. With the crime and murder rate in El Salvador reaching record-breaking levels, an emergency medical unit finds itself being one of the few institutions that is willing to stand up to the country's gangs and at the same time offer a safe haven and sense of community for the country's young people. My Dead Dad's Porno Tapes. After the death of his father, filmmaker Charlie Tyrrell decides to take the time to try and better understand who his father was. He does this by going through the stuff that he's inherited from his dad, which includes the father's collection of old pornography on VHS. A Night at the Garden. Archival footage tells the story of a huge rally of American Nazis and Nazi supporters at Madison Square Garden that drew a crowd of 20,000 people in 1939, 2 years before America began its involvement in World War II. Period. End of sentence. In a rural village in India, women's menstruation has such a severe stigma that's associated with it that's so severe that women don't have access to any sanitary pads. When a machine to dispense pads is installed, the women become empowered and learn how to manufacture and market their own pads. 63 Boycott. The film details the Chicago school boycott of 1963 when over 200,000 Chicago public school students stood up to the segregationist policies of the city's superintendent, Benjamin Willis, who had, among other things, resorted to using aluminum trailers to deal with overcrowding in predominantly black schools. Women of the Gulag. The film tells the stories of the last known group of women who survived being held in the Soviet-era forced labor camps. Zion. A portrait of Zion Clark, who was born with causal regression syndrome, which left him without legs. Despite his condition and growing up in a foster home, he fights to become a wrestler for his high school team. Next up is Best Foreign Language Film. Now, there were originally 87 contenders here, but they have since been reduced to 9 semifinalists, and the semifinalists are Birds of Passage, Colombia; The Guilty, Denmark; Never Look Away, Germany; Shoplifters, Japan; Ica, Kazakhstan; Capernaum, Lebanon; Roma, Mexico; Cold War, Poland; Burning, South Korea. Now, the one film on this list that I have seen, and I'm sure everyone has heard of, is Roma, and that, of course, is Alfonso Cuarón's newest film. It's shot in black and white, and it tells the story of this woman who works as a housekeeper for this Mexican family, and her trials and tribulations, because I don't really want to say too much more without spoiling anything, but it's an amazing film, and it's absolutely going to get nominated, and if it doesn't, it's going to cause major, major shockwaves, and I mean major. But here are what the rest of the films are about, and I got these plot summaries off IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes. Birds of Passage. Torn between his desire to become a powerful man and his duty to uphold his culture's values, Rapayet enters the drug trafficking business in the 1970s and finds quick success despite his tribe's matriarch Ursula's disapproval. Ignoring ancient omens, Rapayet and his family get caught up in a conflict where honor is the highest currency and debts are paid with blood. The Guilty. Alarm dispatcher Asghar Holm answers an emergency call from a kidnapped woman. When the call is suddenly disconnected, the search for the woman and her kidnapper begins. With the phone as his only tool, Asghar enters a race against time to save the endangered woman. But soon he realizes that he is dealing with a crime that is far bigger than he first thought. Never Look Away. Young artist Kurt Barnert has fled to West Germany, but he continues to be tormented by the experiences he made in his childhood and youth in the Nazi years and during the GDR regime. When he meets the student Ellie, he is convinced that he has met the love of his life and begins to create paintings that mirror not only his own fate, but also the traumas of an entire generation. Shoplifters. After one of their shoplifting sessions, Osamu and his son come across a little girl in the freezing cold. At first reluctant to shelter the girl, Osamu's wife agrees to take care of her after learning of the hardships she faces. Although the family is poor, barely making enough money to survive through petty crime, they seem to live happily together until an unforeseen incident reveals hidden secrets, testing the bonds that unite them. Ica. Ica just gave birth. She can't afford to raise a child. She has no job, debts to be paid, not even a room of her own. But there is no way to suppress her natural instincts. Capernaum. Capernaum tells the story of Zane, a Lebanese boy who sues his parents for the crime of giving him life. And they put crime in quotation marks in this plot summary. The film follows Zane as he journeys from gutsy, streetwise child to hardened 12-year-old adult fleeing his negligent parents, surviving through his wits on the streets, where he meets Ethiopian migrant worker Rahil, who provides him with shelter and food, as Zane takes care of her baby son Jonas in return. Zane later gets jailed for committing a violent crime and finally seeks justice in a courtroom. Cold War. A passionate love story between two people of different backgrounds and temperaments who are fatefully mismatched and yet condemned to each other. Set against the background of the Cold War in the 1950s in Poland, Berlin, Yugoslavia, and Paris, the film depicts an impossible love story in impossible times. Burning. Burning tells the story of three individuals and a mysterious incident they experience. Jong-soo bumps into an old friend, Hai-mi, on a part-time delivery job. Hai-mi asks Jong-soo to take care of her cat while she leaves on a trip to Africa. When she returns, Hai-mi introduces Jong-soo to Ben, a man she met in Africa. One day, Ben and Hai-mi pay Jong-soo a visit, and Ben reveals his secret interest to Jong-soo. So, based on these contenders, Roma, I think, is absolutely going to get nominated. Cold War, I've been hearing a lot of strong buzz about. It's been getting a lot of critics' nominations, and it's gotten some other awards nominations, so I think that's a lock. Same with Capernaum, that it's gotten a lot of previous nominations, plus its unique story, I think, will make it a lock here. Shoplifters, I think, will also be nominated because it won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival last year, which is their top prize. And then Burning, I think, will also get a nomination because it's gotten a lot of high praise. It was also shown at the Cannes Film Festival, where it got a lot of praise there. And it even features a pretty high-profile cast member, which most of these films usually don't do. One of the cast members of Burning is Stephen Yeun from The Walking Dead. Alright. Next up, Best Makeup and Hairstyling. And there's 7 semifinalists, from which there will only be 3 nominees, and I still don't get why they don't just increase it to 5. It's very baffling. But anyway, the 7 semifinalists are Black Panther, Bohemian Rhapsody, Border, Mary Queen of Scots, Stan and Ollie, Suspiria, Vice. So out of these, I think Vice is easily going to get nominated because the way they transformed Christian Bale into Dick Cheney, wow. I mean, he literally is Dick Cheney. I could possibly see Black Panther and Bohemian Rhapsody maybe getting nominations, but Bohemian Rhapsody could be tricky because there's not a lot of prosthetics or anything that the Academy usually likes to go for. But, well, then again, they did have to create fake teeth for Rami Malek when he played Freddie Mercury, since Freddie Mercury's teeth were very famously crooked. But Black Panther I could see possibly with its makeup designs, particularly on Michael B. Jordan from photos I've seen. And I know Stan and Ollie makes John C. Reilly wear a fat suit, and he has like a fake mustache. Border, it's the Swedish entry for Best Foreign Language Film. I've never seen it. Mary Queen of Scots, though, I do think has a much stronger chance, and I am personally going to predict it because, you know, we see Queen Elizabeth wearing her famous white makeup, which we find out is used to cover her smallpox, which we see without her white makeup, and it's pretty convincing. But then this might be a long shot, but I'm going to predict this as the third and final nominee is Suspiria, simply because of the fact that they transformed Tilda Swinton into an elderly man, because she plays 3 different roles in this movie, and my God, was it truly convincing. I mean, she still had kind of a high-pitched voice to indicate that it was a woman playing a man, but she still very much looked like a man, especially with the prosthetics to make her look much older. So yeah, ultimately my 3 predictions are Mary Queen of Scots, Suspiria, and Vice. For Best Original Score, there were 156 scores originally submitted, but this year they didn't post the full list, and now there are 15 semifinalists, and they are Annihilation, Avengers Infinity War, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, Black Panther, Black Klansman, Crazy Rich Asians, The Death of Stalin, Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald, First Man, If Beale Street Could Talk, Isle of Dogs, Mary Poppins Returns, A Quiet Place, Ready Player One, Vice. I'll admit some of these scores I don't really even remember at all. Like, I barely remember the scores for Crazy Rich Asians or The Death of Stalin or Fantastic Beasts. A lot of these scores, though, that I do remember are good. Like Ready Player One had a nice score, Vice had a nice score. I know Black Panther's gotten a lot of praise for its score. Annihilation had a very nice sci-fi vibe to its score. But the ones that I really love, and these are the ones that are predicted to be nominated, are scores for things like First Man with its great score, If Beale Street Could Talk, which is a very emotionally swelling type of score with a lot of big dramatic moments. Isle of Dogs, Alexander Desplat, once again at his finest, one of my favorite composers of all time. Mary Poppins Returns, I think, is also a lock because, you know, it's a musical and you not only need great songs, but you also need a nice score as well. But if I had to pick what I think will be the nominees, I'm going to predict Black Panther, First Man, If Beale Street Could Talk, Isle of Dogs, and Mary Poppins Returns. Now on to Best Original Song. So 90 songs were submitted in this category, but like with Best Original Score, they didn't post the full list. But now there are 15 semifinalists, and they are When a Cowboy Trades His Spurs for Wings, from The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, Treasure from Beautiful Boy, All the Stars from Black Panther, Revelation from Boy Erased, Girl in the Movies from Dumplin', We Won't Move from The Hate You Give, The Place Where Lost Things Go from Mary Poppins Returns, Trip a Little Light Fantastic from Mary Poppins Returns, Keep Reachin' from Quincy, I'll Fight from RBG, A Place Called Slaughter Race from Ralph Breaks the Internet, Oh Yeah, I think that's how it's pronounced. It's spelled O-Y-A-H-Y-T-T, but like when I listened to the song, they were like, oh yeah, from Sorry to Bother You, Shallow from A Star Is Born, Suspirium from Suspiria, The Big Unknown from Widows. Some of these songs are okay, like When a Cowboy Trades His Spurs for Wings from The Ballad of Buster Scruggs and Treasure from Beautiful Boy. They're decent songs, but not necessarily all that memorable. I've heard All the Stars a few times on the radio. It's a pretty good song. Shallow from A Star Is Born, that's easily going to be nominated and win, although I wish they'd also included some other songs as well, such as the finale song, I'll Never Love Again, which is my personal favorite song from the movie, but they decided to only submit this one. But this is still a good song in its own right. I'll Fight from RBG, that's a very good one. It's written by Diane Warren, sung by Jennifer Hudson, and that's a very powerful combination right there. And Diane Warren's one of those big, always a nominee but never a winner people. So maybe they'll feel the urge to give it to her, but Lady Gaga has such a strong lock already that I don't think Diane Warren's going to win this time. Girl in the Movies I could see possibly getting nominated because it's written and performed by Dolly Parton, and, you know, if there's anything the Academy loves, it's these big-name legends, and they've nominated Dolly Parton twice before for 9 to 5 and Transamerica in this category. But they do also love current stars like Kendrick Lamar and SZA, who do All the Stars, and then Troye Sivan sings Revelation from Boy Erased, and maybe he could possibly be nominated for that, but the song itself, it's fine, but maybe a little robotic at times from the way he sings it. Suspirium, that's done by Tom York of Radiohead, because he did the score for Suspiria. I don't really remember the song itself, I'll have to honestly look it up again, but I do like Tom York and Radiohead's music in general. But I don't know if that's going to be nominated. I'm sure one of the songs from Mary Poppins Returns will be nominated. They're both very good, but I bet Trip a Little Light Fantastic probably has a better chance because it's a bigger number, involves a lot more people, whereas The Place Where Lost Things Go is just a short little lullaby. So if I had to predict what I think will be nominated, I'll say All the Stars, Girl in the Movies, Trip a Little Light Fantastic, I'll Fight, and Shallow. Next up is Best Animated Short Film. Now, there were 81 films that were originally submitted in this category, but we're now down to the 10 semifinalists, and the 10 semifinalists are Age of Sail, Animal Behavior, Bow, Bilby, Bird Karma, Late Afternoon, Lost and Found, One Small Step, Pepe Lemorse, Weekends. And here are the plot summaries of each of those short films, once again provided by Charles Bright from GoldDerby.com. Age of Sail. In 1900, an old sailor named William Avery spots a woman who has fallen overboard. He hesitantly rescues her and attempts to find salvation and a sense of hope while going through his darkest times. Animal Behavior. Various anthropomorphized animal characters take part in therapy appointments. Bow. An older woman becomes an unexpected mother after one of her bow dumplings comes to life. Bilby. Perry, a desert-dwelling marsupial, goes through the challenges of parenthood after he saves a chick from predators and negligently becomes her protector. Bird Karma. A long-legged bird takes a liking to a multicolored fish, but when the bird eats the fish, it results in really bad karma for the bird. Late Afternoon. An elderly woman finds herself going back through her memories and existing both between her past and present. Lost and Found. A knitted dinosaur must completely disentangle itself to save its true love. One Small Step. Luna, a Chinese-American girl, finds herself getting lost in the idea of becoming an astronaut, along with the help of her father. Pepe Lemorse. A family makes a reluctant journey to the beach in support of the grandmother, who is mourning the loss of her husband. Weekends. A young boy in 1980s Toronto goes back and forth between the homes of his recently divorced parents, with a mixture of dreamlike moments and domestic realities. Now, I've only heard of 2 of these. One of them I've actually seen, which is Bow. It's a Pixar animated short, which played in front of Incredibles 2, as well as Age of Sail, which I hear uses like virtual reality animation techniques. So these categories are very hard to predict. But if I had to make predictions, I would say Age of Sail, Bow, Bilby, Late Afternoon, and Weekends. Because I've noticed the animation shorts often tend to be very different from one another in terms of story, and some are very funny, some are very serious, and they're usually about roughly a 40 to 60% ratio of the two. So those are kind of just my random guesses. I partly had to put in Bow because Pixar shorts almost always get nominated here. They don't always win, but they almost always get nominated. Next is Best Live Action Short Film. 140 films were originally submitted for this category, but now there are 10 semifinalists, and they are Caroline, Chuchotage, Detainment, Fauve, Équerre, Marguerite, Mayday, Mother, Skin, Whale. And here are the plot summaries, once again by Charles Bright from GoldDerby.com. Caroline. A 6-year-old girl is faced with an immense responsibility when her plans fall through on a sweltering Texas day. Chuchotage. 2 interpreters attending a conference in Prague vie for the attention of one of the listeners to their translations from their Hungarian booth. Detainment. Two 10-year-old boys are brought into a police station for questioning about their possible involvement in abducting and murdering a toddler. The story is based on interview transcripts from the 1993 James Bulger case. Fauve. Set in a sulfur mine, two boys find themselves in a seemingly innocent game of one-upmanship that quickly escalates to levels that they would never have expected. Icaire. On a small island, an inventor is toying with machines so that man might be capable of flight like a bird, and also searches for the right person that could accomplish such a feat. Marguerite. An elderly lady and her nurse develop a friendship that forces her to revisit secret longings and affections and thus reconcile with her past. Mayday. Several people, desperate for a job, gather in a man's living room as the man auctions off the job. Mother. A woman at home with her mother in Spain receives a phone call from her young son, who's on vacation in France with his father. Every parent's worst fear starts to come to fruition. Skin. When a black man has a seemingly innocent interaction with a 10-year-old white boy at a small supermarket checkout, two gangs are sent into a merciless battle that concludes with a terrible backlash. Whale. A youth offender is trying to get his life back on track with his mechanic business when he's framed by one of his new clients for a disturbing crime. Now, I actually have heard of one of these. Whale got nominated at the BAFTAs for Best Live Action Short Film as well, but the others I have never heard of. But Best Live Action Short Film, from the times I have seen other contenders, they often tend to be pretty dark and serious. Maybe one or two of them might be more lighthearted, but they often tend to portray very serious issues. And as a result, if I had to make a guess, I would predict the nominees will be Caroline, Detainment, Mayday, Skin, and Whale. And then finally, Best Visual Effects. There were originally 20 contenders, and I made a separate video about that, but now there are 10 semifinalists, and they are Ant-Man and the Wasp, Avengers Infinity War, Black Panther, Christopher Robin, First Man, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, Mary Poppins Returns, Ready Player One, Solo: A Star Wars Story, Welcome to Marwen. Now, pretty much any of these films could easily be nominated because of the heavy visual effects that are in them, hence why they're here. I haven't seen all of them, but I've seen at least their trailers for pretty much all of them. Like, I haven't seen Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, Black Panther, or Avengers Infinity War yet, but I might at least watch Black Panther if it gets nominated for tons of stuff across the board. But obviously they'd be in contention here because those are all very visual effect heavy films. Christopher Robin may not be as visual effects heavy as some of those, but there obviously are a lot of visual effects with making the Winnie the Pooh characters come to life in the form of their stuffed animals. First Man obviously would be in here because it's a space movie. Mary Poppins Returns, of course, because it uses the 2D animation like the original film did, and the original film won this category way back in 1964. Ready Player One, of course, that'd be in here because it's a Steven Spielberg film and it's set within the world of a video game. In fact, my official predictions would be Avengers Infinity War, Black Panther, First Man, Mary Poppins Returns, and Ready Player One. I do hope, personally, that we could see a nomination for either Solo: A Star Wars Story or Welcome to Marwen. Both these films were technically flops at the box office. Obviously, Solo made a lot more than Welcome to Marwen, but by Star Wars standards, Solo is an unfortunate flop. But its visual effects I thought were great, especially during the Kessel Run sequence with the Millennium Falcon. That looked incredible. And Welcome to Marwen, you know, that's directed by Robert Zemeckis, and I think that film is highly underrated. It's not a perfect film by any means, and I think it's a weak Robert Zemeckis film compared to his other films he's done. But the way they make these dolls come to life, because Steve Carell's character has a miniature village populated by dolls as part of recovery from this brutal attack, how these dolls come to life, and the way Steve Carell and the other actresses like Janelle Monáe, Leslie Mann, Eiza Gonzalez, etc. are shown on these dolls, I thought it looked incredible. So fingers crossed that that pulls off a surprise nomination, but we'll see. Alright, so I've gotten through all 9 of those semi-finalist lists, and I have one more pre-Oscar video coming out real soon, and that'll be all of the eligible contenders for Best Picture. So please be sure to let me know in the comment section below what you think of some of these semi-finalists for these various categories. Be sure to like and subscribe to my video and click the notification bell to get all my new videos when they're uploaded. And I will see you guys next time with my Best Picture Contender video. Bye!